Is the iPhone 7 as magical as Apple thinks?
And is it game over for Samsung with its exploding Note 7?
Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Alcatel. Welcome to Vertical Hold, the tech show where we channel surf through the headlines in search of the big picture. I'm Adam Turner, and I'm joined by a man who's trying to work out where you plug an 8-track cartridge into an iPhone 7, Alex Kidman. So Alex, what's new in tech?
Sony's announced not one, but two upgrades for the PlayStation 4. The PlayStation 4 Slim will launch this month in Australia, essentially replacing the existing fat model with, you guessed it, a slimmer model. While the PlayStation 4 Pro will launch later in November, with 4K support for streaming services, but weirdly, no support for actual 4K Blu-ray discs.
Foxtel has announced that it's dropping the prices on its online Foxtel Play streaming service with new entry-level packages, but unfortunately it's not prepared to tell us the price until the end of the year, so it remains to be seen whether we'll get a better deal on Game of Thrones. Foxtel is also offering an Apple TV style media player, but again, we're still waiting on pricing.
The ACCC has announced it intends to hold an inquiry into whether it would declare domestic mobile roaming. If it did so, carriers would be forced to share regional network access. Vodafone's announced it's in favour of the plan, citing the cost of regional rollouts, while Telstra is opposed, stating it will stifle investment.
Google's Project Tango augmented reality platform is ready for prime time, with Lenovo launching the first compatible device in the 6.4-inch Fab 2 Pro phablet. Selling for US $499, the phablet features a wide-angle camera lens along with an infrared projector and camera, so it can scan the room to get a true sense of depth in order to drop virtual objects into your view of the real world. So Alex, we're seeing new PlayStations from Sony. Is there much to get excited about here?
Well, that kind of depends. I think it's a little hard to get all that excited about the PS4 Slim. This is a strategy Sony's had before where you release the original console and then, hey, you release it a bit smaller a year or so later. But what's really weird here, though, is the time difference between when the PS4 Slim comes out and then the PS4 Pro comes out really isn't that long at all. The PS4 Pro is going to launch in November for only a very small amount of money more with a significantly more capable kind of product. So I can't exactly see too many people rushing out to buy the PS4 Slim at this point in time. It almost feels like they should have stayed with, I guess what people are going to start calling the PS4 Fat, as the cheap model, and then go for the Pro for those who really want it.
Have we seen a Pro? I know they've done Slims before, but have we had a Pro before? Or is that a new concept for the PlayStation?
The Pro is definitely a new concept. It's a new kind of almost PC-esque direction for them to say, look, instead of a PlayStation 5, we're going to have a more powerful PlayStation 4.
Yeah.
So it's a tough one.
And the big thing with the Pro is 4K, yes?
Well, 4K, yes, a bit maybe. As we mentioned in the news...
That doesn't sound encouraging, yeah.
Well, no, because when you think 4K, you think 4K media support.
You would assume so, yes.
Yeah. And this has 4K media support for streaming services. So if you're, part of that lucky, tiny little percentage of Australians sitting on a big, fat NBN pipe...
Lucky, yes.
Those folks, yes.
Those folks,
if you're one of them... and you buy a PS4 Pro, then theoretically, at the end of the month, you'll be able to watch Luke Cage on Netflix in 4K resolution, and I envy you. Which
is good because there weren't that many set-top boxes that would do Ultra HD Netflix. Originally, you had to buy an Ultra HD player, and then I think the Fetch TV was one of the very first set-top boxes.
Yeah, but what this leaves out completely in the cold, and what I think arguably is going to be a bit more important for a fair number of Australians for a fair time, is any kind of 4K Blu-ray support, which is weird because Sony, it likes discs.
So this thing doesn't have a 4K Blu-ray player in it.
That is correct. And Sony likes discs. It's got to play in the Blu-ray space. I mean, a very solid play going back years, of course.
Yes.
But they've just kind of gone, no, not going in this one.
Kind of weird because the PlayStation 3 was kind of their secret weapon in the format war with DVD HD or HD DVD. You see, I can't even remember the format properly. And
that funny little drive that people plugged into the Xbox 360 for about 3 movies, one of which was King Kong, and then realised there were no other movies and gave up on it.
King Kong wasn't that great anyway. But yeah, so Sony put the Blu-ray, and at the time it was the most cost-effective and one of the best Blu-ray players around. The fact they haven't done this time is interesting. Perhaps it's because they're not in a format war this time. Maybe it's because they don't want to cut into sales of their standalone players. I don't know. Why do you think they wouldn't put it in there? It would seem to be a no-brainer.
Unless they don't have a whole lot of faith in disc-based formats going forward, which, doesn't bode well, obviously, if you're thinking of buying an actual Sony player.
No, but I think Sony would, though. Sony's got, got a lot of history with optical discs, and you would think that they would be one of the vendors that would hang in there for a while with optical support for new formats. So, Alex, you got up at stupid o'clock to sit through the iPhone launch. I was on an aeroplane at the time, so I didn't really have much choice. What did you see in the early hours of the morning that impressed you?
Well, I was impressed that I was up and the coffee was keeping me moving. I'm all for, frankly, dragging California quite a bit closer to Australia so I don't have to get up quite so early. But, look, having said that, probably the thing that actually made my jaw drop the most was the thing that they announced first, which was that they're bringing a new Mario game to iOS, and that probably says an awful lot about my actual priorities, but also a certain amount about the secrets that Apple can and can't keep.
Yeah, when they want to keep a secret.
Yeah, because when they announced, and maybe this is Nintendo too, when they announced Mario, when they had Shigeru Miyamoto come out on stage, it was like, whoa, that's significant. Like that I don't think anyone called or picked.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a game we won't actually see till the end of the year, and it's an endless runner, which is not exactly the most unique format, but Nintendo can probably pull it off. Be very interested to see what they charge for it. That aside, though, so much of what's going into the iPhone 7 was leaked beforehand. There really weren't too many huge surprises. It was already suggested that it would be waterproof. It is. That's a great feature to have. Lots of other premium phones have it. It was suggested it would have a dual camera. Well, only the 7 Plus has a dual camera, but I quite like the idea of what Apple's doing with its dual camera array. So where the LG G5 has a standard and a wide lens on it, or the Huawei P9 has a standard and a monochromatic lens on it, instead Apple's gone for a standard lens and then what they're calling a telephoto lens, a lens with optical zoom in it. Not a huge degree of optical zoom. You can't, push this too far without having, huge things sticking out the back of your phone.
Yeah.
But the concept of being able to say, well, I'm not close enough to this thing, but now optically I am. I can still take a 12 megapixel photo, which obviously you can then blow up a bit more for that digital zoom effect. That's actually got quite a bit of potential for, I think, the average camera user. I was also kind of impressed that they were honest enough to say, yeah, look, we think we're making pretty good cameras for phones. We don't think they're going to replace DSLRs, because they're just about the only manufacturer that's ever said that. They've all said, oh, you don't need another camera of any type. Well, no, you can still do photographic things with a DSLR that phone cameras are going to struggle with just because of the size of the optics involved. It's very simple in that regard.
So from a basic dimensions perspective, am I right in thinking that the new iPhone is no thinner than last year's one, the last model?
That's correct, and I mean, obviously, that's a new thing for Apple because they've been going for this thinner mantra.
Yeah.
Hopefully, while they haven't released what the actual battery specification of this thing is, hopefully that means that they've used whatever extra space they could hollow out from the inside to pack a bit more battery life in it, because the biggest problem with iPhones for years has been the battery life. Compared to other premium phones, they struggle. They just do. Even the 6 Plus or 6S Plus struggled, and their only admission was that they thought you could get 2 more hours out of the 7 compared to the 6S, or an hour out of the 7 Plus compared to the 6S Plus.
But I think that's due to a more efficient processor, not due to a larger battery.
Which worries me a bit. Look,
at least they haven't made it even thinner, though. I was half expecting bloody Apple to shave another millimetre off it just so they could say thinnest iPhone yet, and the whole thing lasts 3 hours between charges. So at least, hopefully, they've lost that obsession with making it even thinner and can concentrate on making it better. Because I never hear anyone complain that their current iPhone is too thick. I've never ever heard anyone say, oh, this iPhone is too thick, I'm sending it back. It's not what people care about.
Exactly. Look, I think we've reached the point where phones, until we get new battery chemistry or new glass materials and stuff like that, phones are not going to get that much thinner, and they don't need to. You're absolutely right. The other thing, of course, that they did cut out, however, and this was, again, widely rumoured, widely mocked, is still being widely mocked in certain places, is the standard 3.5mm headphone jack.
Yes.
Now, you're a guy who enjoys his high-res audio. What's your take on the no headphone jack iPhone 7?
Well, I think that's been deliberately leaked by Apple. I think they wanted to soften the blow. They wanted to try and not have all of the attention on that at the launch by letting people know in advance. I think it sucks for a few reasons. I think it shows a real disrespect for users that they would strip out what is perhaps one of the most universal plugs in the world. And just because it's old doesn't mean it's no good. Expecting people to pay for Bluetooth headphones, and now that they've got skin in the game, they've got like a vested interest in pushing you into Bluetooth headphones. But the thing that really concerns me is the quality of the sound that you'll get from the Lightning port. And they say, oh, it's digital sound, it's perfect. Yeah, but somewhere between the Lightning port and your ears, it needs to be turned back into analog sound. And to do that, you use something called a DAC. Now, today's iPhone has got a DAC inside it between the phone and the headphone jack, and it's a pretty good DAC. The sound coming out of the iPhone, you plug good headphones into it, sounds okay. Now, any Lightning device has to have a DAC built into it. Now, I've tested $90 Lightning earbuds that sounded pretty damn shabby, right? Now, Apple is selling a $9 Lightning to 3.5mm adapter, which means it has a DAC inside it.
That's the US pricing. I think it's $12 here.
Well, 12 sell. Oh, well, that's all right. I'm sure it'll be fine if it's $12.
The extra $3 will make all the difference, I'm sure.
Which means this thing's probably costing them cents to buy. This thing, I would be very surprised if it sounds as good as the analog sound coming out of the old phone. And people will say, oh, it's perfect digital sound, therefore it's going to be great. Don't listen to that. That's rubbish. It is digital, but it's that DAC that makes the difference. And I think most people don't understand that, but they're about to understand that. And you're going to see a lot of a market for a good DAC, a $50, $100 DAC. Because if you spent $500 plus on headphones and you're relying on a $9 DAC, then you're not really doing those headphones justice.
Having said that, I mean, look, I know you're passionate about high-res audio, and I know why, and that's fine. I suspect the prevalence of effectively low bitrate streaming music services and their widespread adoption suggests that not a lot of people are likely to care.
No, that is the sad thing, that people won't notice. But even low-res music will sound better with a decent DAC. But yeah, you're right. When you listen to when you consider some of the rubbish that people listen to, perhaps they don't care.
Now, the new iPhones were not the only thing that Apple announced this morning. They also showed off the second series Apple Watch devices. And these are basically mild upticks to the existing Apple Watch. Claimed better battery, slightly better processor, waterproof, and inbuilt GPS. I think I've probably said more about smartwatches on this podcast than any human being alive. But could you be tempted into a new Apple Watch or the now slightly cheaper old Apple Watch?
No, I still think it's a solution looking for a problem. I can see how it would work for some people if you wanted to wear that instead of something like a Fitbit, or if you really had to have your notifications on your wrist at all times, or for some people. But for me, no, I don't see why. Maybe just to be crazy, maybe I'd want to know the time, But I still don't think it's the killer product that Apple hoped it would be. I still don't think it's got that one killer feature. But like the iPhone, what they said for a while, it needs a killer feature. And in the end, there was no one killer feature for the iPhone. It was a killer ecosystem. So maybe the watch can eventually get there, but I don't think it's there yet. I think we're still one step away from that real one that will take off.
Yeah, the one interesting thing, actually, and they were a little quiet about this, that they announced their ceramic case Apple Watch, which is a premium device.
Yeah.
And of course, the Apple Watch itself is a premium device, but this is their premium device.
Premium, okay.
What they were a little quieter on is that for the second series, this is effectively what the Apple Watch Edition was. And to recap for those who weren't familiar, the Apple Watch Edition was the super ultra high range Apple Watch. These were the $20,000 Apple Watches. They're gone now. You can't buy them. Oh. If you didn't buy one yesterday, if you were thinking, I'll just nip down the Apple shop and buy a $20,000 Apple Watch, well, you missed your chance because they're gone. And the ceramic one it tops out at $1,900, which makes me wonder. Well, did Apple realise actually there is a price ceiling for what people will pay for an Apple Watch?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the other differences are in the specs. But there's always someone who wants the diamond encrusted iPhone or whatever. Maybe they realised that market wasn't quite there.
Perhaps. And I mean, I suppose it also you've got to ask the question. As they claim quite high sales within the smartwatch category for the Apple Watch. Some analyst figures I've seen suggest that, but smartwatches haven't been all that in a bag of chips because they're just not selling that many pure numbers of them. Presumably, everyone who wanted an Apple Watch bought one in the last year. I wonder how many of them are going to go, right, well, GPS and maybe a bit of better battery life. Is that enough to get them to upgrade? And does this in fact mean that if you want an Apple Watch, possibly the best way might be to buy someone's second-hand Apple Watch because the market might be flooded with them?
Could be. I think part of it also is that it's a relatively new category and you can't assume it's going to have the same upgrade cycle as a smartphone. And this is what happened I remember when tablets came out as well, and I said that it'll be interesting to see what the upgrade cycle is because there's not as much of a pressure to buy one every 2 years, or your contract doesn't run out and you think, oh, I'll get a new one for what feels like free even though it's not. So yeah, because you're not buying your Apple Watch on a 24-month contract, I think that they will notice that it will be the kind of thing that people aren't going to go, oh, well, that one's slightly better, I'll chuck this one away. It is going to be a bit of a slow burn for them, but I couldn't see it ever reaching the market saturation point of something like smartphones.
Now, you mentioned earlier, Adam, that you were on a plane earlier this morning, and it's probably a good job that you were not on a plane with a Samsung Galaxy Note 7 because... while Apple seems to be having a fairly good week, Samsung's had a fairly horrible one.
Yeah. Now I've sort of followed this from abroad, but I got the impression that some of them were going kaboom. Yes.
Yeah, pretty much. They're catching the batteries are catching, the internal sealed batteries appear to be catching fire while plugged into a charger. Mm-hmm. And there were cases of this in South Korea, and they investigated and they pulled it from sale there. And then late last week, they pulled it from sale here. And then very late last week, they announced, look, yeah, we're going to be doing either a recall, repair, or a fund thing. Then earlier this week, they just said, look, we want them all back. They apparently sold somewhere around 50,000 Note 7 devices since the launch, and that was only a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
But look, I mean, as a straight public safety announcement, if you're listening to this and you've got a Note 7, for God's sake, trade it back in.
Take it back to the shop.
Even if you like it, even if you think, oh, this is great, they will replace it. The claim is that it's going to take them about 3 to 4 weeks to get new stock that does not have this particular problem. And they will replace it. Don't, whatever you do, think, oh, well, look, I'll just wait out 3 to 4 weeks. How bad could it be? Well, how bad it could be is you plug it in to charge it overnight, and then you never wake up again because your entire house burns down. And that bad.
Also, people tend to charge their phones by their on their bedside table as well. So that's even scarier to think that this thing could be 6 inches away from your head. So yeah, don't risk it. Just take the damn thing back.
Exactly. I mean, it's a pity in a lot of ways because, look, without a shadow of a doubt, this damages the Note 7 brand. People are not necessarily going to trust it. And I'll put my hand in the air. I had a review device from Samsung, which I had enjoyed testing out for some time. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, I'm not entirely happy with this, but it's flat. And now I have to clear it in order to send it back. But if I have
You've got to wake it up to wipe
charge it. Yeah. And that basically means I've got to sit here and watch it like a hawk. And if smoke starts coming out of it, I've got to yank the power out and
get
hit it with
an extension cable,
burning.
take it out in the backyard on the concrete or on the grass or something like that, way away from everything
near
precious
the paddling,
to you.
Yeah, near the paddling pool. And
yes,
exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Hazmat suits, the whole thing.
Yeah, so there's damage to the brand. There's a lack of trust in the brand, which I think is a pity because it's actually a very good phone. It easily sits amongst the pantheon of premium phones released this year, but I don't know that the consumer trust is going to be there. And of course, Samsung are infamously, running neck and neck, or in some cases in the lead of Apple specifically. So to have their Note 7 be going boom, while all the hype is going boom for the iPhone 7 is just the worst possible timing, especially. And I'm not suggesting for a second here, by the way, that Samsung has rushed it to market in terms of its design or anything like that. But especially Notes used to come out after the iPhone upgrade cycle. Samsung altered that this year, to have it come out before the iPhone upgrade cycle, that in itself will have been a deliberate marketing decision to try and get people to buy Note 7s before they bought iPhone 7s. And it will have backfired rather spectacularly because, of course, you do have the option, straight Australian consumer law says you've got the option, to take it back and just get a refund for it. Or if you've got it on a contract, all the carriers will offer you a different phone. They'll offer you a replacement phone in the meantime if you do want to get one of the new Note 7s. But, it's undoubtedly, it's going to push people towards other phones, which is clearly not what Samsung would have wanted. Well, that just about wraps it up for this episode of Vertical Hold. Remember, if you've got any comments, hit us up in the comments section on YouTube, via Twitter, or the Facebook Vertical Hold page.
Thanks for joining us. Remember, if you like what you hear, hit that subscribe button. Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Alcatel.